This is a project that I started working on in 1996. I was going around to art galleries with my artist portfolio, a book with images of my work, in hoping to landing an exhibition somewhere. And there was this one gallery owner, and he was a really good one, and he's a really great one these days. He took his time and sat down with me and looked at my work, and when he was done, he said something like, you should try to get some more life experience. You should live a little, travel the world, and then come back and show me what you've done. And I really didn't know what to do with that. I felt both like tapped on the head and belittled in one way, and what do you mean live a little and travel the world? That costs a lot of money, and I could barely pay my studio rent at that time. So then the idea of somebody that could travel the world in my place was born. A fictitious vagabond, or a sort of an alter ego. And I named him Anders, or A. Granberg. Many of my art projects start on a very large scale, and so did this one. I decided to have my alter ego visit every country on the planet, or at least the United Nations member states, to have some kind of framework. And in order to accomplish this, I used my homemade postcards. So this is how I went about. When I started the project 20 years ago, I was really into the Swedish author Sture Dahlström. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he writes books with really colorful characters with that are just drenched with complete madness. He would be the equivalent to Hunter S. Thompson, I would think, the American author. And inspired by the way he painted his characters' portraits, I wanted to have my alter ego be as unpredictable and as eclectic. So I started to make all these cards that I made look and feel as different as possible, as unpredictable as possible. But they all have one thing in common. That's the message on the front. Allt, förlöper, fint. Which means something like doing fine or everything is going well. And on the back, a greeting from this A. Granberg. So, first I made a series of 4 postcards. Then I collected contact information for potential collaborators in all the different countries of the world. But first I started out with the ones that had some kind of Swedish connection, like embassies, consulates, and trade chambers and such, and also institutions with some kind of artistic agenda, where the threshold to help out with an art project would be not that high. But that search quickly expanded to neighboring countries and pretty much the rest of the world. And then I started to send out this message with the subject, request for assistance in art project. Dear Sir, Madam, my name is Anders Granberg and I'm living in the city of Stockholm, Sweden. Being an artist, I'm active in the field of contemporary arts. I'm now looking for a person living in your country who could assist me in an art project which I am now working on, and I found your address online. The kind of assistance required is mailing 4 postcards intended for various museums, art galleries, and newspapers in Sweden. The postcards are handmade by myself and delivered by mail in an envelope to the person who will be kind enough to help me. All the postcards will be completed with a greeting message, my name, and the name of the recipient. The only thing required is providing stamps and putting the cards in a mailbox. I will, of course, reimburse stamp expenses. If you or anyone else will be kind enough to help me with my art project, I will provide a detailed project description. And even if you're not able to help me, I would greatly appreciate a response to this mail so I can find another contact for your country. Best regards from Sweden. I have sent this message out thousands and thousands of times through fax, email, and Facebook. And in the beginning, the fax was the most reliable way to get in touch with people in strange countries. And after a couple of years, the email worked really well. You could actually find contact information to highly ranked government officials and even presidents straight on their websites. So I believe the president of Nauru, which then had the email address president@nauru.gov, assisted me in mailing cards. But this was before spam was born, or before I started spamming, I guess. And then Facebook arrived, and that was a gold mine. A lot of countries had their own groups, and many people from that specific country were members of that group. And nobody had locked profiles or personal profiles, or if that was even invented, I don't know. But funny enough, the good old fax was towards the end the best way to get in touch with the people. So I've sent that message many, many times. And once in a while, I received a positive answer, like this one from Algeria, or this one from Helali in Burma, Myanmar. But sometimes I did get some negative answers, but most of the times I didn't get an answer at all, just to make sure. But it said positive answers, like this one from Lisa in Trinidad. But when and if I did receive a positive answer from somebody willing to help me with my project, I take my 4 postcards, and on 2 of them, I write the address to museums, to galleries, or art critics, or people and places that I wanted to recognize my work. And the other 2, I write my own address. And these cards then work as sort of verification cards. Then I simply put the cards in an envelope, and I send them off to my collaborator in, let's say, New Zealand. And when the cards arrive there, all they have to do is open the envelope and put stamps on the cards, and let the international mail service do what it does. So, when and if these cards find their way back to me, the other recipients have received those cards probably as well. And this greeting from all these different countries from this A. Granberg. I've, over the years, sent many, many cards to the same people, so they've gotten greetings from all over the globe during this period of 20 years. And since my language skills are limited to Swedish and English, there's been quite a few misunderstandings over the years. This is not an easy project to explain, even in my own language, Swedish. But there's so many incredibly kind people out there that actually take their time to read this odd request, answer it, give me their address, accept these cards, go buy stamps and mail these cards. It's really incredible what people do for art's sake. But there's been gaps in the communication. Like in this case, my collaborators took my cards and put them in individual envelopes and then wrote the address on that envelope, which sort of spoils the illusion of me actually sending the cards from that country, since it wasn't my handwriting that got the cards back to Sweden. Or in this case, this kind person sent all the cards back to me in the same envelope. Or this happened quite a few times as well. They thanked me for my strange-looking postcards and made their own, or went out and bought their own. So 2 stories about 2 different countries. The first one, North Korea. This was one of the countries that I initially thought would be the most difficult one to have cards sent from. But I quickly made contact with a Mr. Paik Chol Ho. Sorry about that pronunciation. And he was engaged in something called the Sweden-Korea Friendship Society. And I have never, ever found any info about that organization online or anywhere else for that matter. But I sent him the cards and he sent them back, so that's fine. And we kept in touch through email a bit after that. And all of a sudden our conversation was hijacked by something called Bank. And that is one of the two internet providers in North Korea. And they wanted me to open a communication account if I wanted to keep touch with this citizen Pike for the simple fee of 50 euros. And then I had to pay 0.1 euro per character. So that was the end of that conversation. And then we have the fantastic Paradise Island of Antigua. I got in touch with a hotel owner named Andrew. He was willing to help, so I sent him the cards and he sent them back. And he then asked me if I could help him out by translating his website to Swedish to attract or to communicate with Swedish tourists. And I said, fine, I can do that. That was an easy thing to do. So I did that, and he was very grateful, and he wrote me and said, you know, if you ever come here, you can stay for free. And it's probably one of those things you say but don't really mean. But I had to take a chance, so I went there. I took my wife, Erica, and it's a great hotel, the Coconut Hotel. I highly recommend it. Each card in my complete collection of cards really have a neat story, but there's not time enough to tell them all here today. But as I said in the beginning, my absolute ambition from the beginning was to have cards or have my alter ego visit every country on the planet. But as the project proceeded, I realized that that was not going to be possible because some countries are in such poor condition that they don't even have a functioning mail system. And a couple of the newer countries don't have an address system. And now these gaps in the complete collection of cards really make some kind of impact, makes you think of the condition of that country. I think it's really interesting, so it's quite valuable for the collection. And during this entire project, I have stayed anonymous. These cards have become collector's items, and they've been exhibited in museums, and art critics have written articles about them. And I've been tracked down a couple of times, but I've denied any involvement in the project. But a couple of years ago, I sort of came out of the mailbox, and all the complete collection or the whole project is now on display at the Postmuseum in Old Town, Gamla Stan in Stockholm till the end of the year. And since the beginning, I've saved every piece of correspondence. I've saved every email, every fax, every letter for 20 years, and all that now works as sort of a wallpaper throughout the exhibit. And there's quite a bit of fun reading there, actually. Some polite answers and some impolite answers. And looking back at the conversation I had with the gallery owner 20 years ago, I think I'll have to admit that he did have a point, or maybe two. Even though I didn't myself go to all these places and do all this traveling, it did make my life richer. And it did give me some life experience, and perhaps the level of interesting for my art became slightly higher. So thank you for listening.